your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.
All right, good evening, horror fans. Welcome to another episode of the Weekly Horoscope. I'm your host, Jerry, here with my partner, Matt. And Matt, good evening. Tonight we're going to talk about Kreepy Kids.
Good evening. The classic trope of creepy kids can often come off as very campy or cheesy or sometimes satirical, but it can also ignite the fear of the instability of youth that we see with young gang violence or school shootings or bullyings, which can also have severe ramifications. With these types of movies, you see the corrupted innocence of youth that dramatizes the loss of hope. And I think that makes for very layered, dynamic family horror films.
Yeah, good point. There are a lot of different ways we could have went on this one. Some I think were obvious, and we kind of steered away from maybe some of the obvious ones, but interesting choices that we have. Our first film we're going to talk about is The Children of the Corn, 1984, directed by Fritz Kirsch, and it was his first film, which I found a little odd because it was right in that era where everyone was making a Stephen King adaptation. You had Cronenberg do The Dead Zone, you had John Carpenter do Christine. Cujo came out. Everything was right in that stretch. So for someone that is their first film to get a Stephen King adaptation, I thought was somewhat unique. Of course, it's based on a short story, and it kind of stretches to fill a full feature-length film. But there's some highlights here we're going to talk about. What did you think of the movie, Matt?
Well, it definitely has a dated feel to it. I think some of the cinematography, as dated as it is, I kind of like it. Like they do the deserted town with the shucks of corn everywhere, which kind of has this, dilapidated feel to it. I thought that was pretty cool. And I'm always a fan of the music, as like that ominous like Catholic chanting that they do in the movie. That famous sound. Yeah, I'm always a fan of that. So there's some things in the movie that I think are still great, and there's some other things in the movie that are just really dated.
Yeah, I totally agree. We start, it says Gallatin, Nebraska 3 years ago is kind of how it opens. And I like the opening scene a lot because it's, you have no idea what's going on, but you see these kids, and there's one odd looking kid who we learn is Isaac, who just has a really strange look to him, and he looks like an old pastor out of a church, but he's a kid.
Yeah, like an evil Amish kid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we start in a diner, and we see the kids lock the door, and we see people are drinking coffee, and the coffee's making them sick. It's poisoned somehow, and then the kids just start killing all the adults, and they kill them with cleavers and crowbars, and they shove one guy's hand into a meat slicer.
Yeah.
And I actually thought that scene was pretty good. The kills were good, the effects were decent, and set a creepy tone to start the movie.
Yeah, I agree. It's a very vicious scene because they just lock everyone in, poison the people who are drinking, and stab and kill everyone else, and it's just vicious.
Without hesitation either. There's no kids trying to find their way through this newfound violence. They just go. And you're like, what the heck's wrong with these kids?
Yeah, and it kind of sets the tone right there.
They definitely fit the category of creepy kids for sure.
Yeah.
Then we find a couple traveling, and there seems to be some issues between them. It's his birthday. He's a doctor, and it's funny. You talk about different eras, but watching this in 2023, he's a grade A asshole. He really he talks down to the woman.
Yeah.
And the woman is Linda Hamilton, pre-Terminator.
Yep.
Like, dude, that's John Connor's mom. You can't talk to her like that.
You need to tread water here, sir.
He's very condescending, very know-it-all. He just treats her bad. He treats some of the kids bad.
He's real arrogant.
Yeah. I'm like, this guy's a total blowhard.
And she's trying to like wake him up and like, come on, and like just like singing a silly song, and he's just like putting his hands up like, oh, you're embarrassing. Like,
Yeah.
it's just us doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's kind of making fun of her in the car later when she's kind of hinting at the relationship. He's like, whatever. He's like eating snacks. Yeah.
I found him instantly unlikable.
Yeah.
Which I didn't remember from seeing the movie as a kid. But they start traveling, and we cut to there's a young kid named Joseph, and he's going to escape the cult of kids. And he tells Job and Sarah, who are little brother and sister, that he's going to leave and he's going to send help. And we see him take his suitcase and run through the corn, but we see him get caught. We don't see by who, but he gets his throat cut, blood all over the suitcase, and then his body's pushed out into the road. And of course, our couple traveling, Bert and Vicky, they run over his body.
And that scene right there, that seemed like kind of edgy for 1984. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't see a lot of kids get their throat cut and thrown into traffic.
Yeah, and run completely over. They didn't graze him; they ran over him.
Yeah.
And this is again where I see the Bert character being just so they're just in this traumatic experience, and the woman's a little upset, and he tells her, "You're just tired. Take a nap." Which is you just ran over a kid. Take a nap. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And she does.
It's very condescending. Like,
so condescending. That's exactly the word I wrote down. But she does take a nap, which is ridiculous. But he finds out the kid had his throat cut before they ran him over. He finds the suitcase, and so they take the suitcase and the kid, and they try to go into town. And they stop at a gas station. Back to the trope of the rundown gas station that seems to be in every movie we talk about. There's an old man and a dog, and the old man tells him to keep going and go to another town. And so the couple
you can tell he's petrified or something. He's scared.
Yeah, he's definitely scared, and scared for them, it would seem.
Mm-hmm.
When they try to leave, the road signs are all messed up and confusing, and they end up back where they started. Meanwhile, these dark clouds roll in over the corn with some ominous music, and the dog runs into the corn. So, we don't know what's going to happen there.
It feels like, you feel like there's this entrapment going on by some greater force. Like, how, like they somehow wound it right back, right through the corn. The cornfield.
So the couple comes back around, and now the old man opens the hood of the truck he's working on, and inside the hood of the truck finds the bloody bandana from his dog. And he starts to go into the garage, and when he goes inside of the garage, he's surrounded by a group of kids, the oldest being Malachi, who is seems to be the right-hand man for the leader, and they kill the old man. And I found myself asking, why they let him live for 3 years only to kill him then.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of logic to that.
No, there wasn't. But I think what it was he was supplying them with fuel. Like, we learned this later.
Yeah.
And Malachi just wants to take over. So he's just doing things differently now. He's like, we don't need him anymore.
Yeah.
It's kind of the revolution inside of the instability of that revolution.
Yeah. And they don't, I asked this question later, but they don't really talk about any infighting or any reason that Malachi wants to take over, other than he's just an aggressive individual. But
he wants.
I feel like they missed an opportunity for the power struggle to be dove into a little bit.
They could have written that into, but
we see Isaac leading a group of kids. Isaac is the would you call him a pilgrim?
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't call him a pilgrim.
No, he was a evil Amish child.
Evil Amish child. Yeah, he's got the hat. He just has
which is what pilgrims were, anyways. Right?
Creepy look to him. He's unsettling as a kid, and his demeanor is just very perfect for the role.
Wasn't he 25 when they filmed this?
Oh, I don't know.
That actor was 25. He just had that he had an issue with aging.
Oh, he had like the
Yeah, he was born in 1959. Yeah, his name was
no kidding.
John Franklin, I believe. And later in the 90s, he was cousin It for both Family Adams movies.
Oh, no kidding.
Uh,
I had that it was John Franklin, and
Adams
that
Family Values.
he
I'm
was
sorry.
amazing in the role.
Yeah,
But I did not realize that about him.
yeah. He was 25 when they filmed that.
And he's preaching to the kids about they need to kill the outsiders in worship of, and this is a part I really like about the movie, he who walks behind the rows. I just
Yeah,
find that to be like a creepy description of whatever god of the corn they're worshiping.
yeah. Some kind of demon that's pulling the strings, right? He who walks behind the rose. Yeah, it's a good metaphor.
Yeah. The couple goes into town. They find a house and they see movement inside, so they go in to check it out, looking for people. And they find a little girl, Sarah, of the original brother and sister Sarah and Job, and she paints her visions, but she's not supposed to. So Bert continues to be a condescending douchebag at this point, and he leaves to head off into town. The kids surround the house, and they take Vicky, and they now have her. And
Mhm.
Bert returns and just sees a drawing that the girl made of showing Vicky captured and cut. And we see Vicky's on a cross of corn with a group of kids around her, just chanting kill, 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 kill.
Yeah.
And
That
very.
drawing part was really cool because Vicky asked her to draw her something,
Mhm.
and then that's what she draws, like her immediate future. Yeah.
Yeah, she has these creepy visions, which they
Yeah.
don't really get into, explain, or dive any deeper into. But Sarah seems to be one of the good kids in the community.
Yep.
Bert runs into a church where there's a ceremony going on, and he interrupts it. And it appears to be a boy is turning 18 and is going to be gladly sacrificed at this point because he's moving to an adult and can't be a part of the community anymore. And the kids attack Bert in the middle of the church. He escapes, and he finally holes up in a store, and Job finds him, and he brings him to the barn so they can hide with his sister Sarah as they're going to watch the ceremony in the corn. This is where we see Malachi revolt against Isaac. Again, we don't really have any insight into what the conflict was, but Isaac was the leader because he told the kids that he spoke directly to he who walks behind the rows, and he spoke through him.
I think the one thing Malachi has the one line where he's like, "We're kind of doing all the work, and you're just preaching. We've had enough of your words." So he feels like he's been treated like a dog. I'm doing all this work. I'm the one running around talking to everyone. I'm quarterbacking all this, and you're in charge. Yeah. So
And Malachi is bigger. He's older.
Yep.
He may be approaching the age where he's got to be sacrificed soon. But
he wants to change that rule real quick. Yeah.
The kids fall in line quick. Like they don't quit. Nobody questions it. They just overthrow Isaac instantly, and they hang him up on another cross with corn. And the Malachi cuts Vicky's face in an effort to lure Bert out of hiding. And he does. And the kids catch him and they bring him into the opening. So now, everybody's there in the opening and the darkness is coming in and we hear the noise in the corn. And there's anticipation for this, he who walks behind the rows. What is this thing? What is this creature, this mythical beast? And we kind of get the ground bubbles up. Something's moving underground,
Yeah.
Is it Bugs Bunny because he didn't make the right turn at Albuquerque?
Yeah.
We don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's certainly cartoonish in animation. Yeah.
It very much is.
Yeah.
Isaac's body gets absorbed by this red energy, and him and his cross burst.
Yeah.
And the visual effects are very cheesy, very poor. It to the point it actually distracts from the movie. It's that bad.
Instead of going with some kind of normal special effects, they try to do a CGI thing, and CGI in 1984 just wasn't there. It
really looks like a cartoon.
Yeah.
And so that part's really poor. Bert saves Vicky off the cross and tells the kid that it's all a lie. And Malachi tackles him, and we have a fight. Very poorly staged fight. There's horrible fake punches that are thrown at half effort, and there are slaps that miss by a foot, but are sold as if they connected. It's just very poorly done. Disappointing at that part for one.
Yeah, I mean, the movie has. I think it has good build up. Like with them coming into town and discovering what's going on, and then the third act with the lack of good CGI and the bad fighting, it just kind of takes a quick dive.
Yeah, agree. So after this awful fight, Malachi comes back. Isaac comes back.
Yes.
And he's all burnt and zombie-like, and he grabs Malachi. And at this point, everybody runs into the barn.
And that would have been a much better for the movie if they showed him transforming into that zombie-like state on the cross instead of going back to the CGI thing.
Yeah,
like they could have done some cool zombie transformation and shown it, and that would have been fantastic.
Yeah, simpler would have been much better there. They tried to do something fancy, high end, and it failed miserably.
Yeah.
There's a storm raging, and the barn is falling apart. Bert decides that what they can do is burn the cornfield. So he hooks a gas line up to the watering machine, and there's red clouds rolling in, and the ground's moving again with something underneath that we don't ever actually see. And he lights the field up. He gets all the gas running and lights it up. And there's an explosion. And then there's these very cartoon-like red flames that go straight up into the sky, like they've got a direct connection to, space. And again, very cheesy, very poorly
takes you right
done.
out of the moment.
Yeah. So Bert and Vicky, and they take Job and Sarah, and they're all going to leave together and walk to the next town. And then there's a final. He opens his car to get something out, and there's one of the girls is in there, and she attacks him, like one final surprise. But he knocks her out, and they leave. I think, in my opinion, the story was decent. The buildup was pretty good. Some of the kills were pretty good, but the visual effects, between the visual effects with that awful fight sandwiched in there, kind of ruined it for me.
Yeah. There's some parts of the movie that are just rough. Even that last line, like when they're standing at the car, and Bert and Vicky, like they kind of kiss, they have that like final moment together, and he looks over at the kids. He's like, "What, are you jealous?" And like smirks. I'm like, "Why would you say that?"
Yeah.
I was like, who wrote that line? Yeah, just to make him look even more chauvinistic and weird.
Yeah, I agree. So oddly enough, this film spawned multiple sequels as well as
like 20
remakes. Which is funny to me, but anything to make a buck. But not the worst movie ever, but really missed on a couple opportunities that could have made it much better.
I agree. I think this movie, what I like about it is it has an interesting contrast of like the youth destroying the adults, and also at the same time like taking away all the hedonism and entertainment that's typically associated with being youthful, and like turning them into like these isolated ideologues.
Mm-hmm.
And then they find themselves in cornfields, which is almost like a metaphor for like work and toil.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of interesting contrast that the movie could work with, and I just they missed a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, well, they're not allowed to play, they're not allowed to draw.
Right. But they're not allowed to get but there's no adults either, right? So there's this interesting, they're keeping them these child isolated ideologues, but then you have to go work and toil in the cornfields.
And all these kids bought in with, we don't get to see how they're convinced, but it seems it just seems odd that you could get that kind of buy-in for a life that seems miserable.
Yeah.
Okay. Our next film is Orphan from 2009, directed by Jaume Colette Serra. And I apologize if my pronunciation on that is not accurate.
I wouldn't.
when you selected this film, I was a little disappointed because I remember seeing this when it came out, and I was like, it's all right, it's interesting.
Yeah.
But I got to say, on rewatching it, with a closer eye, there's some really good parts to this movie.
Yeah,
There's some
and
parts that are really well done.
absolutely, and I love the acting. Peter Skarsgård, Vera Farmiga,
Yeah,
and then the girl who play Isabel Furman, who plays Escher. All of them fantastic.
yeah. Particularly the parents are good. Yeah, no doubt. But we talk about child acting, and Isaac and Malachi from our first movie both did a really good job. The rest of the kids were pretty weak. But Isabella
Yeah,
Furman knocks it out of the park.
she's the complete star. Yeah,
Yeah, totally.
yeah,
We open with a really cool, not cool, but really traumatic dream sequence where our main character, is reliving a brutal stillborn third child, and she's having this awful nightmare reliving it. And there's some brutal, tense parts in that.
yeah.
We
And
find
they,
out. Sorry.
not just that, but like in the dream, like the husband is filming it while he's smiling. So it's just dark. Like it's just a dark. She's like, "Why are you doing this?" She's like, "Are you guys gonna knock me out?" And the doctor's like, "Nope, you got to stay awake for this." And like the husband's smiling, and the whole thing is just twisted.
Yeah. Why are you filming this?
Yeah, it's a twisted film. Yeah,
Yeah. So they decide that their stillborn child, they name her Jessica, and they decide, a little while later, that they're going to adopt, and they go to an open house at an orphanage, which I didn't even know that was a thing. I don't know if that's really a thing. It's all like they're selling artwork or something.
yeah. That was kind of I was like, well, this is interesting. Like, this isn't like they're just gonna come on in there and check all the kids out, and the kids are like waving, and like it's kind of like like you said, an open house, and
Yeah. It's like a bake sale or something.
yeah.
Well, Dan, the husband, finds a Russian girl alone upstairs, and she's singing and painting. And this is Esther, and she is smart, and she is charming, and she is very good at showing you what she wants you to see.
Very articulate. She seems read like literature and educated.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, they decide to adopt her. And at home, they have a 5-year-old girl named Max, who is deaf, and a 12-year-old boy named Danny. And Esther gets close very quickly to most of the family. And in fact, one night the parents are fooling around in bed, and there's a storm, and Esther wakes up Max, and the two girls go and they get in bed with the parents, and she gets in with on the father's side.
Yeah.
And right away you're like, man, this is a little odd.
Yeah.
And the next day, Esther's pulling Max in a sled on a frozen pond that apparently Max had almost died on before. That freaked the mother out. And she also kills a bird with a rock that Danny had shot with a paint gun. So she's odd.
Yeah. Danny shoots the bird with the paintball, thinking it was just gonna be like a harmless thing.
Yes.
And she goes over there and she's like, "No, we need to kill this thing and put it out of its misery." And she's like, you can tell there's something about her that's just cold-blooded.
Yes. And she does it without emotion. She just picks up a rock and smash.
Like she's special forces and she's done it before. Like,
yeah. She's getting picked on at school. She dresses strange. She behaves strange. So Max is getting close to Esther and being very supportive of having a big sister, but Danny wants nothing to do with her. She creeps him out.
Yeah.
And
it sheds a good light on Esther, because you're thinking like, oh, maybe she's being really good to Max, and she's kind of like, listen, I'm your older sister, I'll take care of you. And you're kind of seeing this multi-dimensional character where you don't really know where to place her or what's going on.
Yeah. And she again, the acting is fantastic. Esther's a great character. The mom, after getting upset about the sled on the frozen pond, brings her into their greenhouse and shows her the rosebush memorial that they made to Jessica, and tells her that her ashes are in the soil, and as long as this is alive, she'll be alive in our hearts. And it's kind of touching moment. The mom wants to share it, and kind of a bonding moment.
Yeah.
That really comes back at us later.
Yeah. Well, a lot of this movie, it's very much a dark plunge into like the diminishing facilities of the mother from dealing with the loss of a stillborn baby. You know, the marriage is kind of on edge. There's some history there that they kind of touch on a little bit. That's kind of still not something they've dealt with. There's a former drinking problem that the mother has that she's trying to deal with. She has a deaf daughter that she's trying to, work with. There's just a lot of these harsh realities of things that could effectively give someone PTSD, and the mother is just trying to keep the family together and bring this new daughter into the family.
Yeah, we learn about the alcoholism, which was a factor in Max's near accident in the pond.
Yep.
We learn about the infidelity from the father. So there's some definitely underlying issues there. Makes you wonder if these two were really a good candidate to adopt a third child.
Right. And
Maybe they
what
should
were
have
their
been
motives
focusing
for
on the
doing
two
this?
they had and each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the playground, Esther, her bully shows up at the playground, and Esther kind of traps her at the top of the slide, and it's kind of a tense moment. The girl's running around, you don't know where she is, and as she gets to the top of the slide, there's Esther behind her, pushes her, and the girl goes off sideways and breaks her leg.
You see the ankle snap. Yeah.
Yeah, and now we've started to feel that Esther's a bit of a manipulator, and now we're starting to get more glimpses into her dark side. And the parents begin to fight over Esther, as the mom thinks maybe she did push this girl, and the dad's defending her, and doesn't believe that a sweet 9-year-old girl could be doing any of these bad things.
Right. And they're starting to argue, like, well, why are you blaming her? Like, what's really going on? Yeah. And you start to see that their creaky marriage, like, they have this undertone of like a past, and they still haven't worked it out. And now this is the thing that's kind of breaking the camel's back.
Yeah. The mistrust was there, and
Yep.
and now this is adding tension to it for sure. And to add to it, Sister Abigail from the orphanage, she shows up and tells them that, hey, maybe something is wrong with Esther, and that bad trouble has always followed her. And she starts telling stories about, well, this kid had this happen, and she was there, and all the way down to her prior adopted parents. Their house burned down and died, and it was determined to be arson.
Yeah, and Esther was fine. Yeah.
And Esther was fine.
Yeah.
So again, everybody just wants to be blind to this 9-year-old girl could possibly be involved, but there's real questions coming up now.
Yeah, and which is true, because you wouldn't blame a 9-year-old for all this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, so, yes. So it just kind of makes for this perfect crime.
In the real world, you wouldn't think of it. It's just
right,
not how the world works.
Right. So for the mother, for Kate, like it makes sense for the husband to kind of like realistically go, slow down. I don't think this kid's running around burning stuff down and breaking kids' legs, and
Yep,
totally. You're a little stressed out. Yeah, he's
totally reasonable. You would expect.
Yeah.
As Sister Abigail leaves, Esther leads Max up to the road on the way out and pushes her out in front of the car, which causes the sister to swerve and plows into the snow. And when she gets out to go to the road to check on Max, Esther bashes her in the head with a hammer.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, this is more than pushing a girl on the playground.
Yeah.
Bullies get what they deserve, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
But now we're going deeper and deeper down this road.
And then she tells Max, listen, you stop crying, and you're gonna help me drag this body out there.
Yes.
And drags it out into the woodsy area with the snow, and just continues to bash her head in.
Yeah, repeatedly. And she uses the old, you're just as guilty as I am. You're in on this too now.
Yeah. To scare her. Yeah. And she's deaf. She can't talk.
Right.
I mean, she can communicate, but
Yes. And they hide the hammer and the bloody clothes in the treehouse. But then Danny sees them coming out that night. Again, this keeps getting deeper and darker. That night, Danny wakes up with a knife at his throat, and Esther is over the top of him and wants to know what he saw and who he told. And he said he didn't tell anybody. And she tells him, and a great line of the movie, she tells him, you don't say a word, or I will cut your hairless little prick off before you find out what it's for. Yikes.
Yeah.
12-year-old Danny is just like,
He peed.
Okay.
He pees himself, and then she lets him know. She's like, "You just peed yourself." Yeah. To
I
add insult to
don't
injury
really blame
right
him.
there. Yeah,
I don't really
would too.
blame the kid. That's a brutal line, particularly
Right.
when it comes from the
Yeah.
mouth of a 9-year-old girl.
So,
You're like,
yeah,
what am I
yeah.
dealing with here?
Yeah.
At this point, the mom finds out that Esther was never in a Russian orphanage, and she's really getting suspicious at this point. But the dad continues to stick up for her, and it continues to create tension between the two of them. So the dad and Esther are home alone, and she tells him how much she likes being with him and that mommy isn't always nice to her. And he says, you should do something special for mom. And when mom gets home, we find out special was she cut all the roses off the Jessica Memorial rose bush and presents them to her as a bouquet.
With a big smile, like, "Look, mommy, look what I did. I pick you these flowers." Yeah.
And she freaks, as you could imagine.
Yeah.
And she grabs
her by
and,
the arm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so Esther goes down at night and puts that arm in a vice. As we start to get more indication as to her mental offness, whatever you want to call it, she puts her arm in a vice and turns it until we hear it break.
It's not like hear it, but they show it. They show the bone pop straight out. I was like, "Oh, cool. She's gonna do a little bruise. I get that." And then she just like goes for it, and I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't scream. Doesn't just.
Yeah. She puts like a screwdriver around like a rag, and then puts that in her mouth and bites down on it.
Yeah. Goes back to bed and calls Daddy, and says her arm really hurts from where Mommy grabbed her. And he sees it, and it's black, it's discolored. And he takes her to the doctors, and he's really, really mad at the wife. And when they get back, he puts Esther in his bed and tells the mom that she needs to sleep downstairs, further driving this divide between the two of them.
Yeah. I would have lost my mind. I was like, how strong do you think I am where I could snap someone's bone just from grabbing them real quick? But whatever.
Yeah, crazy.
Either way, yeah.
So this is just traumatic to the mom. And as a recovering alcoholic, she goes out and she buys some wine. And it's one of those moments where, is she going to drink it? Is she not going to drink it? And I'm always pulling so hard. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah.
And she dumps the wine out down the sink. She bought 2 bottles, opened the one, and she dumps it down the sink.
Yeah. It kind of keeps the integrity of the character when they do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
When they refrain.
You feel so, having not been through a struggle like that, but you feel so bad for the people in that position, and you really are rooting for them to be successful.
Because it's deflating. Like, oh, they gave up. They came this far. Yeah.
Yep. So the next morning at school, Esther sneaks up and puts the car into neutral and releases the brake, and Max is in the car. So the car rolls back down a hill, missing cars all the way, and then into a big snowbank.
Which is like the 3rd time she's put her in harm's way.
Yes. Yeah. This person who she's supposedly,
constantly saying, "I'm your bigger sister, I'll take care of you," and then puts her in harm's way like she's a prop.
Yeah. Well, back at home, the father and now the mother psychiatrist are there, and they're both blaming the mom. And they're saying, they bring out the empty bottle from the night before, which conveniently he says, the girls found this. And she says, "You mean Esther found it?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's saying, "Yeah, I didn't drink it. I dumped it." And they're like, "We don't believe you."
Yeah.
And they're completely, both of them turn on her hard. And he tells her, you need to go to rehab, or I'm leaving with the kids.
Yeah.
So this situation is spiraling worse and worse for the family.
Yeah. Well, I mean, which is a good point. Like, why would only one be dumped out? You'd obviously think, one was drank, and your alcoholics tend to have a compulsive lying about their drinking. So it's a natural inclination,
And he says, you lied before. I don't believe you.
Right.
And you know, part of you wishes he'd be a little more supportive of his wife,
Yeah,
but that
because he
undercurrent of
was in a
mistrust.
yeah, but he also lied to her previously,
Yeah,
and so they're both playing this game.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, for
which
sure.
isn't
You
healthy,
feel bad for the family as a whole, I suppose, at this
right?
point.
Yeah,
Mom tries to leave in the middle of the night with this ultimatum over her head. And when she goes into Max's room, Esther is there. And she's sitting in a chair and she is reading quotes from the mom's diary, including all the horrible things she went through, the loss of the child, the near loss of Max to the accident, her alcoholism. It's she's just blistering her with awful things out of her own diary.
it's sinister. Yeah.
Totally. Later, Mom sneaks into Esther's room and gets the Bible that Esther has carried around with pictures of men stuck into different pages, and she finds in there the name of a place where the Bible came from, and she's figuring this must be where Esther got it, and she calls the place, and it turns out it is a mental health hospital, not an adoption center.
Mm-hmm.
And she's thinking, well, maybe Esther's mom was there, her original mom. She doesn't really know. But she sends them Esther's picture and asks, do you know anything about this girl? Meanwhile, Danny, the kids have decided they've had enough. That they're going to do whatever they have to do. So Danny breaks into the treehouse. He's going to get the evidence against Esther. And of course, she is there. And she had already taken the evidence out. She throws it into a pile and she sprays lighter fluid on it and she lights up the evidence and the treehouse
and starts spraying it at
Danny.
Danny's feet. Yep. Yeah. Just psychotic.
And yeah, just going to burn the whole thing down with Danny in it and just doesn't care.
Yep.
And so
while
Danny,
he's cornered in the with the fire, like right in the corner where he can't move, she backs out down the treehouse and locks it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you know, so he's out the window, he's hanging on, he's trying to walk on the roof, it's burning and starting to fall through.
Yeah, his foot's on fire. Yeah.
Now the time I'm watching, I'm yelling, going, it's a treehouse. Walk over the branch and go down the tree.
Just jump.
And there's snow, so like even just jump, but
he's a horrified kid, right?
He's horrified, so, yes.
Right.
And he ends up falling to the ground. And Esther comes up with the rock, and it looks exact duplicate of what she did to the bird she's about to do to Danny. But the last second, Max pushes her out of the way from behind. Mm-hmm. And at this point, the mom runs out, and she is full on accusing Esther. What did you do to my boy? So they go to the hospital, and Danny's okay. He's going to be all right. But Esther sneaks away and goes into Danny's room. And I thought this was really clever. She puts his monitor on her finger so that they can't tell, and she's smothering him.
Yeah.
Doesn't want any reaction on the monitor to bring a nurse in. So I thought that was very clever.
Yeah. She's a very intelligent psychopath.
Yes, very true. Finally she's done. Danny's quote unquote dead, we think at this point. She puts the monitor back on him and leaves, and it starts going off flatline. It's
flatlining, yeah.
And the mother comes around the corner, and there's Esther drinking a soda. That was her excuse for why she was leaving. Yeah. And the mother says, "What did you do?" and smacks her across the face.
Yeah.
In the middle of the hospital in front of everybody. Again,
right. She's had enough because she knows, right?
But nobody else knows.
Right.
So
all
it's making her look
crazy.
Smash this 9-year-old girl's face in the middle of the hospital.
Yep.
So they grab her, they struggle with her, and they give her a shot to take the mother out. Yeah. And just as she passes out, the phone rings, and it was the Institute calling back, and she never gets the call.
Yeah,
you're like,
because the call, the call's her phone's on the ground, and they're restraining her.
Yeah. So the dad takes the two girls home. Danny's okay. They got him back. He's resuscitated. He takes the two girls home, and he takes that bottle of wine and he drinks the whole thing, like fast.
Yeah.
And he's drunk.
Yeah.
Which is a little ironic that he still harbors resentment to his wife to being drunk when she was watching the kids and something bad happening.
Yeah.
And he
And
repeats
now,
that
and now,
behavior.
yeah. And now he's repeating that behavior. Yeah. So he's a little hypocritical.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
And so he's drunk, he's woozy, and Esther puts on a ton of makeup and a sexy dress and comes down and hits on him.
Yeah.
And
And
that
he's like seeing double vision, like what? And she's like twirling his hair and yeah.
kissing his neck, and he's like,
Yeah.
what are you doing?
Yeah.
It's an unsettling scene.
It's
It's
very uncomfortable. Yeah.
yes, very uncomfortable. And finally the dad gets angry and yells at her and says, what do you do? You stop it.
Yeah.
You're not
He
go
stands
up to
up. He's
bed.
like, all right, all right. Yeah.
So at least he puts an end to it. It would have been creepier if he responded to her,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it was creepy enough as it was. Back in the hospital, the mom comes to when she answers her phone, and finally it is the Institute, and they're dropping the big bomb of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Esther has a hormone disorder. She was the one in the psychiatric hospital, and she is 33 years old and a violent psycho,
Yep.
which
Yeah.
we already know,
Right.
but we didn't know she was a 33-year-old woman.
Right. And that's one of these twists in a movie that make you immediately like go back and reanalyze every scene you just watched.
Yes.
You're just like, oh, like, yeah, you have this entire revelation of everything that happened. Yeah. And it rewrites how you just saw the movie as soon as you find out that information.
Yes. And it actually disqualifies it from this category now, but we're too far in to back it off because she's no longer a creepy kid. She's a creepy adult.
Right. But then, then it ruins the twist if you, so you have to call it a creepy kid movie. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's two movies where there was kids, but they were really adults.
Yeah. Well, and so she gets, the mom gets in the car. She can't get through to the dad. So she leaves the hospital and she's driving like mad through the snowstorm. And you figure she's probably not even going to make it because she's still a little medicated from the shot they gave her. And the weather's just terrible outside. And she's just going crazy. At one point, she does call 911 and tell them there's something going on at the house. And back at the house, the lights go out. The dad's walking around. He's still drunk. He's trying to find out what's going on. And Esther comes behind him and stabs him in the back. Yeah. And apparently, the story was all the men's pictures in the Bible were men that she tried this with, and who didn't respond to her advances. So she killed them all.
Yep.
She stabs him in the back and then she turns him over and and you're thinking, well, he could probably live through that. Yeah. She's stabbing him in the chest and in the stomach and she's just pincushioning this guy. So he's toast.
Yeah. Which was another twist because I thought we had seen the worst and that this is just another one of these twists in the movie where like, okay, the dad's going to die now. Yeah, I did not see that coming.
Well, for his blind faith in supporting Esther, that's what he got, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, the mom, Max actually sees this all happen, sees Esther kill her dad.
It's weird, not to interrupt, but like it's in a way, like some form of seduction, right? Like she found a way to manipulate him one way or another, right?
Yeah, which she's been doing to everybody the whole film.
Yep.
So Maxon goes and hides in the closet, and the mom arrives and she drives the car straight through the front of the house. Which I never know. Does that get you inside any faster? Maybe a little.
No.
That was a beautiful house.
Yeah, just more violently. You're making a statement for sure. I don't think she wants to live in that house anymore.
But what you never know when you do that is maybe your kids are running by right at that moment.
Right there. Yeah.
It just seems like a poor choice to me, but it happens all the time in movies, and it happened here.
Yeah. There was a lot of poor choices in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. She finds her husband dead, and she's looking around, and Esther shoots her with a gun, shoots her in the arm. And then Esther is just stalking her with the gun. The mom hides outside and ends up on top of the glass greenhouse, where she sees Max and now is down below hiding in the plants. And Esther comes in and she's trying to shoot up through the greenhouse, and then she sees Max and she's trying to shoot Max. So the mom actually crashes down through the glass that's now cracked from the gunshot right on top of Esther and kind of flattens her. And she gets up, and her and Max go outside as the cops arrive for when she had called 911.
Mm-hmm.
But when the cops get inside, Esther's gone. She pulls a, Michael Myers at the bottom of the house.
Yeah.
She's not there anymore. So as we cut to outside, Esther attacks the mom and Max, and she's got a knife. And Esther cuts the mom, and they're fighting, and the mom's trying to fight her, and they end up on the frozen pond that has come into play a couple times.
Yeah.
5-year-old Max picks up the gun that Esther drops and tried to shoot Esther, but instead shoots the ice.
Yeah.
And the ice breaks, and they both go in. So they continue to fight underwater. There's cuts. There's a full-on Esther stabs the mom right in the stomach.
Yeah.
But the mom gets an elbow right to the chops and seems to knock Esther out. The mom gets up on top of the water, and she's climbing out on the ice. And of course, Never Say Die Esther grabs her foot.
Yeah.
And Esther's on her last leg, and she's not doing well. And she reverts back to the child voice she was using.
Yeah.
And
it's
says,
very manipulative. Yeah.
"Mommy, please don't let me die." And she turns and says, "I'm not your effing mommy."
Yeah.
And heel kicks her right into the forehead, snaps her neck back, snaps it ridiculously.
Yeah, that was a vicious kick.
Vicious kick. She's gone.
I loved
right
it.
there.
Yeah.
And she slides back down into the water, and she's gone.
Yeah, it wasn't this little kick where it was like poof, like push.
Get off of me.
It was a full blown UFC like side kick, like right to the jaw, and it's like the blood goes splatters everywhere.
Yeah, and what her neck did was really cool.
Yeah,
This was a pretty good movie. There was a lot of tension. There was a lot of family drama. There was a lot of uneasiness. There was the twist. I actually enjoyed it far more than I did the first time I saw it. So it does not technically fit the Kreepy Kid mode, but that's the twist. So we can't give that away.
Yeah, that's the twist though. Yeah, because the whole movie you think it is. So I just think it's a highly underrated movie. I've always liked it, and I just never really hear a lot about it.
Yeah, good. No. So those were our choices for Kreepy Kids. There's some parallels in the adultness of some of their actions. Completely different stories. Some positives on both sides, but other than the weakness we talked about in Children of the Corn, I thought it was two pretty good movies, and I really enjoyed my Kreepy Kids.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. And again, as bad, as much as Children of the Corn is flawed, it still has some iconic imagery within the movie. So you got to take it for what it's worth. 1984, it was the director's first time. They didn't have a lot of good CGI, but I mean, I like the story.
The story's good, and maybe the strength of the story is what has carried it to all the sequels and the remakes. Not necessarily the outstanding quality of the first movie, but
its
the
originality. Potential. Yeah, the originality, and I love the music score in that movie. So,
yeah, excellent. Well, that is our show for this week. As always, we thank you so much for listening. We're going to be back next week with a category of awesome anthologies that we're looking forward to very much.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, always fun. So we appreciate you listening. I'm Jerry. That's Matt, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jerry.
Your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.